While I lay unconscious in the ICU, my husband sold our family home for pennies on the dollar. "She'll never recover anyway," Jonas laughed to his mistress, pocketing the $2.4 million. When my private banker showed me the deed transfer, I smiled, knowingly, then revealed my hidden $300 million fortune while he was still celebrating on his yacht. The cardiac monitor's steady beep was the first sound that filtered through the darkness. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt sealed shut, as if they'd been glued together during my absence from consciousness. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The antiseptic smell of hospital disinfectant assaulted my senses, bringing with it an awareness of tubes and wires connecting my body to machines I couldn't see. "Ms. Blackwood? Jasmine? Can you hear me?" A gentle female voice penetrated the fog. I managed a slight movement of my fingers in response, unable to form words past the tube in my throat. Something was terribly wrong. The last thing I remembered was boarding my private jet after closing the Singapore acquisition, the crowning achievement of 20 years building my tech empire. Everything after that was darkness. "You're at Mercy General Hospital. You've been in the ICU for nearly 3 months. There was an accident. Your plane experienced catastrophic engine failure during landing." 3 months? Impossible. I had meetings scheduled, deals to close, a company to run. The panic must have registered on the monitors because the voice, a nurse I assumed, quickly continued. "Try to stay calm, Ms. Blackwood. You're stable now. The doctor will be here soon." My mind raced despite the fog of medication. 3 months unconscious meant 3 months away from everything I'd built. My companies, my investments, my properties, including the historic Westlake estate that Jonas had insisted we purchase as our primary residence when we married 4 years ago, the estate I'd paid for entirely, like everything else. "Jasmine, I'm Dr. Isabel Reeves. I've been overseeing your care since you were brought in. Can you blink once if you understand me?" I blinked, focusing on the face that now hovered above mine. Dark hair pulled back, kind eyes, professional demeanor, but something in her expression suggested concern beyond medical implications. "Good. You've sustained multiple injuries, including trauma to your brainstem. The fact that you're responsive now is remarkable. We weren't certain you would regain consciousness." Another face appeared beside the doctor's, younger, with compassionate eyes and a slight furrow between her brows. The nurse's badge read, "Ava Martinez, RN." "Your husband was just here this morning," Nurse Ava said, her tone carefully neutral. "He comes by every few days to check on your condition and speak with the doctors." She exchanged a quick glance, with Dr. Reeves that sent alarm bells ringing in my mind. Something was off about how they mentioned Jonas. The slight tightening around Nurse Ava's eyes, the almost imperceptible hesitation before Dr. Reeves nodded and returned her attention to checking my vitals. In 15 years of high-stakes business negotiations, I'd learned to read the subtlest cues that people unconsciously broadcast. These medical professionals were concerned about something beyond my physical condition. Over the next 48 hours, as the ventilator was removed and I regained limited speech capability, fragments of information began to reach me. Always delivered carefully, cautiously, by Ava during her night shifts when fewer people were around. "Your husband has been making changes to your financial arrangements," she mentioned while adjusting my IV. "I shouldn't say anything, but the conversations I've overheard when he's on the phone in your room, they don't sound right." When I was finally able to speak more than a few raspy words, I asked her directly, "What has he done?" Ava glanced at the door, then pulled it closed. "He's been meeting with realtors. I heard him discussing the sale of a property, Westlake Estate. He mentioned something about needing to liquidate assets quickly before complications arise." The Westlake Estate. Our home, my home. The 18th century manor house with 15 acres of pristine gardens that I'd purchased for $12 million and spent another $5 million restoring. The property that conservative estimates valued at nearly $20 million in today's market. When? I managed. The papers were signed yesterday. I overheard him on the phone celebrating. Something about accepting $2.4 million in cash because beggars can't be choosers? The monitor beside me beeped more rapidly as my heart rate spiked. $2.4 million? He'd sold a $20 million estate for less than an eighth of its value? Ava continued, her voice barely above a whisper now. He was laughing about it, said something like, "She'll never recover anyway, according to the doctors, so what difference does it make?" I closed my eyes, forcing myself to regulate my breathing. Jonas had always been charming, attentive, the perfect husband for a woman too busy building an empire to notice the warning signs. I'd met him at a charity gala 5 years ago, where he'd introduced himself as an investment consultant for high-net-worth individuals. I later discovered his client list was negligible, his business more facade than function. But by then, I was already captivated by his attentiveness, his seeming understanding of the pressures I faced as CEO of Black Tech Innovations. What Jonas didn't know, what almost no one knew, was that Black Tech was merely the public face of my holdings. Through a complex network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and private investments established years before I met him, I controlled assets valued at over $300 million. I had insisted on a prenuptial agreement, of course, but it only covered what Jonas knew about the visible portion of my wealth. I'd never told him about the rest. Something in my gut had warned me to keep certain cards close to my chest. That instinct was now proving prophetic. "There's something else," Ava said, interrupting my thoughts. "He's been visiting with a woman. Not family, not business. She waits in the parking lot, but I've seen them together. They seem intimate." Of course there was a mistress. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. Jonas had assumed I would die, or at least remain incapacitated. He was liquidating what assets he could access, almost certainly transferring funds to accounts I couldn't monitor, preparing for a new life with his lover, funded by my money. "Ava," I whispered, my voice growing stronger with determination. "I need a phone, and my private banker's contact information. It should be in my personal effects. Your husband took most of your personal items, said he needed to secure them. At home. I'm sure he did. Then I need a new phone. Can you help me?" Ava hesitated, clearly weighing professional ethics against what she suspected was happening. "This isn't normal protocol, but nothing about this situation seems normal. I'll see what I can do." As she turned to leave, I caught her wrist with a strength that surprised us both. "One more thing. Don't let anyone know I'm fully conscious. Tell Dr. Reeves if you must, but otherwise, when Jonas visits, I'm still showing minimal responses. Understand?" Ava nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting understanding. "You need time." "Yes," I replied, a plan already forming in my mind. "And he needs to believe he still has it. Before the accident, before Jonas, before the empire I'd built, there was just me, Jasmine Blackwood, daughter of a high school math teacher and a librarian from a small town in Vermont. Nothing in my unremarkable childhood suggested I would one day control hundreds of millions in assets or pioneer quantum encryption technology that would revolutionize digital security. My parents valued education above material wealth, scraping, together enough to send me to college where I double majored in computer science and business. While my classmates partied, I built prototype algorithms in my dorm room. While they took summer internships at established companies, I launched my first startup from a garage apartment, living on ramen and determination. Black Tech Innovations began as 3 people and a concept: unbreakable encryption for the digital age. By 30, I had secured patents that tech giants were desperate to license. By 35, I had completed an IPO that valued the company at $1.2 billion. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Along the way, I'd developed a reputation for being brilliant, but intensely private. The invisible CEO, one business magazine had called me, noting that despite my company's prominence, I remained largely unknown to the public. That was by design. My father had always told me, true power doesn't announce itself. I believed in keeping my most valuable assets hidden from prying eyes, including, as it turned out, from the man I married. The marriage to Jonas had been unexpected. At 41, I had resigned myself to being married only to my work. My previous relationships had all dissolved under the weight of my commitment to black tech. Men either wanted me to be more available or were intimidated by my success. Jonas had been different, or so I thought. He'd approached me at the Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala with easy confidence and genuine interest in my thoughts on the exhibition, not my business acumen. When I mentioned being CEO of Black Tech, he'd nodded, politely but steered the conversation back to art and literature. It was refreshing to be seen as a person rather than a balance sheet. Our courtship was swift, but seemed sincere. Jonas complimented my mind, supported my ambitions, and never appeared threatened by my success. He maintained his own consulting business, though it was clearly modest compared to Black Tech. I'm comfortable with who I am, he'd say. I don't need to compete with you. We married at a small ceremony in the Berkshires. I'd insisted on a prenuptial agreement, of course. He'd signed without hesitation, though with a hurt expression that made me momentarily question my caution. I understand why you need this, he'd said. Your company, your shareholders, you have responsibilities. I just want you to know I'm marrying you, not your money. That prenup now seemed like my one moment of clarity in an otherwise clouded judgment. What Jonas never knew was that Black Tech, while successful, was just the visible tip of an intricate financial iceberg. Years before meeting him, I had established Obsidian Holdings, a private entity that owned minority stakes in dozens of emerging tech companies across Southeast Asia, Europe, and South America. I'd funded AI research labs through shell companies, acquired real estate through numbered corporations, and maintained private banking relationships in Singapore, Zurich, and the Cayman Islands. Even my board of directors at Black Tech weren't privy to the full extent of my personal wealth. My CFO, Clara Wellington, one of the few people who knew about Obsidian, had questioned the secrecy. Why operate in the shadows when you've built everything legitimately? She'd asked during a late-night strategy session. I'd smiled. Because shadows provide protection. My parents taught public school for 40 years and still had to worry about making mortgage payments. I never want to be vulnerable like that. Lying in the hospital bed, those words echoed with painful irony. I had protected my fortune from business competitors, market downturns, and government scrutiny, but not from the man who shared my bed. The Jonas I thought I knew was attentive, supportive, and seemingly content with his modest business while I ran Black Tech. He'd encouraged me to take more time off, to enjoy the wealth we had. Now I understood why. Every moment I spent away from the business was an opportunity for him to search for cracks in my financial armor. Had he married me with this betrayal in mind from the start? Or had temptation grown as he realized the extent of the wealth he could access through me? It hardly mattered now. What mattered was that while he believed me incapacitated or dying, he was systematically looting what he could reach. 3 days. After regaining consciousness, I convinced Ava to smuggle in a burner phone during her night shift. My fingers, still weak from months of disuse, fumbled with the small keypad. Take it slowly, Ava advised, helping me sit upright against the pillows. Your coordination will improve with practice. I nodded, then dialed one of the few numbers I had committed to memory. After 3 rings, a crisp, accented voice answered, Mueller Privet Bank, this is Dieter speaking. Authentication code 4729 Alpha Vega Epsilon, I said, my voice stronger than it had been since waking. This is Jasmine Blackwood. A pause then. One moment for security verification, please. The line went silent briefly before Dieter returned. Voice pattern confirmed, Ms. Blackwood. This is unexpected. We were informed of your accident. How may I assist you? I need information, Dieter. Has anyone attempted to access my accounts or change authorization parameters since my accident? There have been inquiries. Yes. Your husband presented power of attorney documentation approximately 6 weeks ago, requesting access to your primary accounts. As per your standing instructions, we informed him that we would need to verify the documentation through our legal department, which would take several weeks. My lips curved into a grim smile. And did you verify it? We did. Our analysis indicated probable forgery. We have been delaying further communication on the matter. Good. I took a deep breath. I need you to continue that delay. And I need a secure terminal brought to me immediately. Use the contingency protocol. Understood. May I ask your current location? Mercy General Hospital, private room 712. The courier should ask for Nurse Ava Martinez. After ending the call, I caught Ava watching me with widened eyes. Who exactly are you? She whispered. I met her gaze directly. Someone who prepares for every contingency. Someone who's about to remind her husband why that matters. The inciting incident that changed everything wasn't my plane crash, or even waking from the coma. It was what happened on the 7th day after I regained consciousness. I had made significant progress physically. Through sheer determination and secret therapy sessions Ava arranged during quiet hours, I could now sit up unassisted and move my hands with increasing dexterity. My voice had strengthened, though I made sure to appear much weaker whenever Jonas made his perfunctory visits. During these visits, I watched him through barely opened eyes. He would speak to the doctors with practiced concern, occasionally touch my hand for the benefit of any observers, then spend the remainder of his time on his phone, sometimes stepping just outside the door for private conversations that Ava would later recount to me. He's moving money again, she informed me after his most recent visit. I heard him confirming a wire transfer of $800,000 to an account in the Caymans. I nodded, unsurprised. Jonas was harvesting what he could while he thought. I was incapable of stopping him. What he didn't realize was that I'd already begun my countermeasures. The contingency protocol I'd mentioned to Dieter had been established years ago. Within 24 hours of my call, a courier had delivered a specialized tablet to Ava, one with military-grade encryption and a secure satellite connection that bypassed the hospital's network entirely. Through this device, I had already confirmed that my hidden fortune remained intact and inaccessible to Jonas. Obsidian Holdings and its labyrinth of subsidiaries were secured by authentication methods that went far beyond passwords or signatures. But I needed more than security. I needed information. How much had Jonas already taken? Who was helping him? And who was the woman Ava had seen him with? The answer to the last question arrived unexpectedly on that 7th day. I was working on the secure tablet when I heard voices approaching my room. Jonas and someone else. Quickly, I slid the tablet beneath my blanket, closed my eyes to their usual sliver, and regulated my breathing to appear semi-conscious. The door opened. Jonas entered first, his designer shoes clicking against the tile floor. See? I told you. She's completely out of it. The doctors say she might never recover full consciousness. His voice carried the rehearsed grief I'd come to recognize, though now it was tinged with impatience. It's still creepy, Jonas. A woman's voice, low and uncertain. We shouldn't be here. Relax, Meredith. I told you. She can't hear us. Besides, I need to maintain appearances. If I suddenly stopped visiting my dying wife, people might ask questions. I maintained my facade of near unconsciousness while straining to hear and see as much as possible through my barely opened eyes. The woman, Meredith, was perhaps 10 years younger than me, with highlighted blonde hair and expensive but tasteless clothing. Her diamond tennis bracelet caught the fluorescent lighting as she nervously adjusted her oversized handbag. "Fine, but make it quick. We're supposed to meet the realtor at 3. Jonas sighed theatrically. "Another realtor? Haven't we seen enough properties?" "The place in Newport is perfect, and you know it. 3 acres on the water, private beach access, 8 bedrooms. And $12 million, Jonas cut in. "I've already told you, we need to be conservative until everything's finalized. The offshore transfers are still processing, and there's still the insurance money to settle." "Insurance money?" My mind raced. "What insurance money?" "You said her life insurance policy was worth $5 million, Meredith pressed. "And once she's gone?" "It's not that simple," Jonas hissed. "There are conditions, waiting periods. If it looks like I'm planning her death..." "Jesus, Jonas, I never said anything about..." "Keep your voice down," he warned, glancing toward me. I maintained my steady breathing, though rage burned through my veins. "Look, once the doctors declare her condition permanent, I can petition for complete financial control as her husband. Between that and what I've already moved, we'll be set. But we need to be patient." "We've been patient for months," Meredith whined. "Every time I think we're finally moving forward, there's another delay. First, it was waiting to see if she'd die in the crash. Then it was waiting to see if she'd wake up from the coma. Now it's waiting for some legal declaration. Meanwhile, I'm still living in that cramped condo while you're playing devoted husband." My husband placed his hands on her shoulders. "Baby, I promise. Just a few more weeks. Dr. Reeves already told me they'll likely recommend moving Jasmine to a long-term care facility. Once that happens, the lawyers can fast-track the conservatorship. Then everything she has becomes mine to manage." The pieces clicked together. Jonas wasn't just opportunistically stealing what he could access. He had a comprehensive plan to take everything. The conservatorship would give him legal control over all my visible assets: Black Tech shares, properties, investment accounts. With medical opinions supporting my incapacity, courts would likely grant his petition. What truly chilled me, however, was the casual mention of my life insurance. The policy had been part of the Black Tech executive package, ICU, standard $5 million term life benefit. But Jonas's words suggested he had been waiting, perhaps hoping for my death from the beginning. Had my accident truly been an accident? I forced myself to remain still as Jonas placated Meredith with promises of luxury and patience. When they finally left, I waited 5 full minutes before opening my eyes fully, my hands trembling with a combination of rage and fear. Ava entered the room shortly after, clearly having waited for them to leave. "You heard?" I nodded grimly. "Every word. He's planning for my death, or at least my permanent incapacitation, and I'm not convinced the plane crash was an accident anymore." I'd never voiced this suspicion aloud before, but the pieces were aligning too perfectly. Jonas had encouraged me to take that business trip personally, had insisted I use the smaller private jet rather than the company aircraft, because it would be more comfortable. Had he arranged for the mechanical failure somehow? "We need to move quickly," I told Ava. "Jonas mentioned Dr. Reeves recommending long-term care. Is that true?" Ava hesitated. "There's a care planning meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Dr. Reeves doesn't know you're fully conscious, only that you're showing some improvements. I've been charting your responses as minimal and inconsistent, just as you asked." "Good. Keep doing that. But now I need to speak with Dr. Reeves privately. Today, if possible. It's time to bring her into our confidence." "Are you sure?" "The fewer people who know..." "We need medical documentation of my true condition, dated and official, before Jonas can file for conservatorship. And I need to understand exactly what happened with that plane." Ava nodded. "I'll find a way to get..." her here alone. As she left, I pulled out the secure tablet again and began typing a message to Clara Wellington, my CFO. Need accident investigation report for N789BT crash. Confidential. Use secure channel only. The accident that had nearly killed me was starting to look more like attempted murder, and if I was right, Jonas wouldn't stop at one attempt. Dr. Isabel Reeves entered my room after her evening rounds, her face composed but eyes alert with curiosity. Ava had managed to arrange this private meeting by suggesting there were concerning changes in my condition that required the doctor's immediate attention. Ms. Martinez says you needed to see me urgently, Dr. Reeves began, glancing at the monitors. Your vitals seem stable, though. That's because I'm not having a medical emergency, I replied, sitting fully upright and speaking clearly. I'm having a criminal one. Dr. Reeves froze, her clipboard suspended midair. The transformation from her presumed near-vegetative patient to an alert, articulate woman clearly stunned her. How long have you been conscious? She finally managed. Fully aware? About a week. Ava has been helping me keep it quiet for reasons I'm about to explain. I gestured to the chair beside my bed. Please, sit down. What I'm about to tell you requires both your medical expertise and absolute discretion. Over the next 20 minutes, I outlined the situation. Jonas's systematic theft, his conversations with Meredith, his plans for conservatorship, and my growing suspicion about the accident that had put me in the ICU. I understand your concern about the conservatorship, Dr. Reeves said carefully when I finished, but suggesting your husband deliberately caused your plane crash, that's an extraordinary claim. I'm aware. That's why I need information, not just protection. What exactly were my injuries when I was brought in? Dr. Reeves hesitated, then reached for my chart. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a traumatic brain injury consistent with the plane crash. You were in critical condition for weeks. And what caused the crash itself? Was there an official determination? The preliminary report cited catastrophic engine failure during landing approach, but I'm not privy to the final investigation findings. That would be handled by the NTSB. I nodded. I've requested those reports through secure channels, but there's something else bothering me. The timing of my improvement versus what's being documented in my official medical record. Dr. Reeves glanced at Ava, who nodded confirmation. I've been recording Ms. Blackwood's responses as minimal as she requested, Ava explained. The official chart shows limited consciousness, not her actual condition. That's falsifying medical records, Dr. Reeves said sharply. You could lose your license. I know, Ava replied quietly. But after what I overheard, the way he talked about her dying, the money he's been moving, I couldn't just stand by. I interjected before the ethical debate could escalate. Dr. Reeves, I'm not asking you to falsify anything. Quite the opposite. I need you to document my true condition, privately, dated, and certified. A record showing I've regained significant cognitive function before Jonas can file for conservatorship. And you want me to maintain the fiction of your limited recovery. Publicly. Just for a short time. I need to secure my assets and investigate what really happened before Jonas realizes I'm capable of stopping him. Dr. Reeves removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. You're putting me in an impossible position ethically, I understand. But consider the alternative. If Jonas gains conservatorship based on outdated medical assessments, he'll control everything, including my medical decisions. If my suspicions about the crash are correct, that would put my life in the hands of someone who has already tried to end it. The gravity of this possibility visibly affected Dr. Reeves. After a long moment, she spoke. I'll document your current cognitive status thoroughly, with neurological assessments that can be verified later. This documentation will remain sealed in my private records until you request its release or until I deem it medically necessary to disclose it. She fixed me with a stern look. But I won't actively misrepresent your condition moving forward. I'll simply be selective about which improvements I discuss with your husband. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was enough. Thank you. Don't. Thank me yet, Dr. Reeves replied grimly. If you're right about your husband's intentions, you're still in danger as long as you're in this hospital. The doctor's warning lingered after she left. She was right. The hospital was Jonas's territory. Now, he had charmed the staff, established himself as the concerned husband, and positioned himself to make decisions about my care. I needed allies and information outside these walls. My secure tablet pinged with an incoming message, Clara responding. To my inquiry about the crash investigation, preliminary NTSB report attached. Maintenance records flagged potential tampering with fuel line. Black Tech Security investigating. Need to talk directly. Secure line only. CWI opened the attached report and felt my blood run cold. The NTSB's initial findings noted anomalies, consistent with deliberate interference in the aircraft's fuel delivery system. Not definitive proof of sabotage, but enough to support my suspicions. While I was still processing this information, Ava returned with a carefully folded newspaper. Thought you might want to see this, she said, pointing to a small item in the business section. It was a brief announcement about Black Tech Innovations appointing an interim CEO during the extended medical leave of founder Jasmine Blackwood. Omar Khalid, I read aloud, recognizing the name of my chief technology officer. That makes sense. He was next in the succession plan. Is that good news or bad? Ava asked. Potentially good. Omar is brilliant with technology but has little interest in corporate politics. He wouldn't initiate this move himself, which means the board is following contingency protocols. I tapped my finger thoughtfully against the tablet, but I need to know who's really making decisions while I'm indisposed. I needed to contact Black Tech directly, but not through any channel Jonas might monitor, which meant I needed another ally, someone with direct access to the company but no connection to my husband. Ava, do you still have my personal effects from when I was admitted? What's left of them? Like I said, your husband took most items, but there might be something in the hospital safe. What are you looking for? My Black Tech ID badge. It has embedded security protocols that would allow me to access company systems securely. While Ava went to check the safe, I continued reading the crash report. The anomalies in the fuel system had been discovered during the preliminary examination, but required further investigation to determine whether they resulted from the crash, impact, or predated it. If someone had tampered with my plane, they would have needed technical expertise and access. Jonas had neither. He could barely program our home entertainment system, but he could have hired someone. Ava returned empty-handed. No badge in your personal effects inventory. I wasn't surprised. Jonas probably took it. We need another approach. I considered my options. Do you know Bill Mercer? He's the head of security at Black Tech, former FBI, about 50, salt and pepper hair. The name's not familiar. He would have been here during the first days after my accident. The company would have sent security immediately. Ava's eyes lit with recognition. The man who insisted on posting a guard outside your door for the first week? Hospital administration? Finally made him remove it. That's him. We need to contact him, but discreetly. He needs to know I'm awake and that I suspect the crash wasn't an accident. How do we reach him without your husband finding out? I smiled for the first time in days. We don't contact him directly. We use the protocol. The protocol wasn't something I'd ever expected to use. Years ago, after Black Tech secured its first major government contract, Bill Mercer had insisted we establish emergency communication procedures for worst-case scenarios. If you're ever compromised, captured, or under duress, he'd explained, with characteristic intensity, you need a way to alert security that can't be traced or blocked. The solution was elegantly simple. A specific sequence of seemingly innocuous medical lab tests ordered in a particular pattern, would trigger an alert in BlackTech's security system. The tests themselves were common enough that they wouldn't raise suspicion, but the sequence was distinctive, a code that said, "Executive compromised, investigate immediately." "I need you to enter these exact lab orders," I told Ava, writing down the sequence. Comprehensive metabolic panel, followed by specific vitamin D and calcium levels, then a thyroid panel. "These are all reasonable tests for someone in your condition," Ava noted. "Exactly. That's why it works. The timing matters. Space them. Exactly 4 hours apart, starting at 8 a.m. tomorrow." While waiting for the protocol to take effect, I continued investigating through my secure tablet. Another message from Clara contained a bombshell that changed everything. "Jonas met with Westridge Capital 3 weeks before your accident. They expressed interest in acquiring BlackTech. He claimed to represent your personal interests in preliminary discussions. Board rejected offer unanimously after crash. Westridge now circling again with hostile takeover strategy." Westridge Capital. The name sent ice through my veins. They'd been trying to acquire my technology for years, particularly our quantum encryption patents. I'd rebuffed them repeatedly, recognizing that their interest wasn't just commercial, but potentially involved national security implications. BlackTech's encryption protected government systems, financial networks, and critical infrastructure. In the wrong hands, it could be weaponized or compromised. And Jonas had been meeting with them before my accident. I was still processing this. Revelation when Dr. Reeves entered with my afternoon medication. Her expression was troubled. "Your husband called this morning," she said after ensuring we were alone. "He's inquiring about transferring you to Lakeview Long-Term Care Facility." Lakeview? The name wasn't familiar. It's a facility in Idaho specializing in permanent vegetative state patients. Very remote, minimum staffing. I've been stalling, saying you're not stable enough for transfer, but he's becoming insistent. The implications were chilling. A remote facility with minimal oversight would be the perfect place for a patient to experience an unfortunate complication. "How long can you reasonably delay?" I asked. "A week? Perhaps 2 at most, before medical ethics would require me to acknowledge you're stable enough for transfer." I nodded grimly. "Then we have a week to act." Later that afternoon, the lab technician arrived for the first of the scheduled tests. As Ava drew my blood, I silently counted the hours until Bill Mercer would receive the alert. If all went as planned, he would recognize the signal and respond with appropriate caution. The next morning, as the second set of tests was being completed, Ava rushed into my room, her face flushed with excitement. "There's someone here to see you. Says he's from building maintenance. But he asked for you by your full legal name, including your middle name. No one uses that." My pulse quickened. Tall man, military posture, very precise speech. Ava nodded. "That's him. Should I let him in?" "Yes, but check the hallway first. Make sure Jonas hasn't made one of his surprise visits." Moments later, Bill Mercer entered my room, dressed in maintenance coveralls. His eyes widened slightly, seeing me alert. And upright, the only indication of his surprise. "Ms. Blackwood," he said formally, closing the door behind him. "The air conditioning system in this room requires immediate attention." It was our code phrase for secure communication. I responded appropriately. "I hope it won't take long. I'm sensitive to temperature fluctuations." Bill nodded, then pulled out what appeared to be a maintenance tablet, but was actually a sophisticated scanning device. He swept it around the room methodically. "2 listening devices," he murmured after completing his scan. "One in the television remote, another in the landline phone base." He activated a small device from his pocket. "This will block them temporarily, but we should assume everything in this room has been compromised." The revelation that Jonas had been monitoring my room shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. How much had he heard? Had my conversations with Ava and Dr. Reeves been monitored? "We don't have much time." Bill said, pulling a chair close to my bed. Security protocols triggered when we detected the lab sequence. Clara Wellington is standing by on secure comms. But first, I need to know. Do you believe your life is in immediate danger? Yes, I replied without hesitation. And I believe Jonas Blackwood was involved in sabotaging my aircraft. He's working with Westridge Capital. Bill's expression hardened. Then it's worse than we thought. Westridge isn't just after your company. Ms. Blackwood, they're after your encryption keys, and they're not the only ones. What do you mean, not the only ones? I demanded, my voice low but intense. Bill glanced at the device jamming the listening equipment. We have about 10 minutes before this temporary blackout seems suspicious. He removed what looked like a standard smartphone from his pocket and placed it on my bed. This is a secure black tech device, biometrically locked to you only. It contains everything we've gathered so far. I pressed my thumb to the screen, which immediately illuminated with the black tech security interface. The familiar blue glow was oddly comforting, a piece of my real world penetrating this sterile hospital environment. 3 days after your crash, we detected sophisticated intrusion attempts into Black Tech's secure servers, Bill explained while I scanned through the files on the device. Not the usual corporate espionage. These were nation-state level attacks, specifically targeting your personal authentication protocols. Which nations? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. The usual suspects in the cyber warfare arena. But the timing is what matters. These attacks began precisely when news of your accident went public. I processed this information. They thought I was dead or incapacitated, so my biometric authentications would no longer protect the system. Exactly. Your quantum encryption architecture requires both your biometric data and cognitive pattern recognition. No one can access the core protocols without you, physically and mentally intact, unless they had someone with legal authority over me and my assets. Someone like a husband with conservatorship powers. The pieces were aligning with horrifying clarity. Westridge isn't just an aggressive investment firm, are they? I asked. Bill's expression confirmed my suspicion before he spoke. We believe Westridge Capital is a front for several interests that would benefit from controlling or compromising your encryption technology. Clara has been tracking unusual stock purchases. Multiple shell companies began acquiring small positions in black tech immediately after your accident. Together, they now control nearly 15% of outstanding shares. Not enough for a takeover. No, but combined with the shares Jonas would control as your conservator, they'd have effective control of the company, I finished. And with Jonas having medical power of attorney over me, they could potentially extract the biometric and cognitive keys needed to access the core protocols, Bill confirmed grimly, either with your cooperation or without it. The implications turned my blood cold. Black Tech's quantum encryption protected critical infrastructure worldwide. A compromise would be catastrophic. Financial systems, power grids, military communications, all vulnerable. We need to move you, Bill said. Today, if possible. We've prepared a secure location where you can recover fully while we gather evidence. Shook my head. Moving me now would alert Jonas immediately. We need more time to unravel exactly how deep this conspiracy goes. I tapped the secure device. What resources do I have available? Clara has isolated a separate operating fund of approximately $12 million that Jonas doesn't know about. We've assembled a small team, myself, Clara, and 3 others from Black Tech Security with appropriate clearances. Your personal attorney, Martin Winters, has been briefed with limited information. Not enough, I murmured, thinking rapidly. We need more liquidity and operational flexibility. I made a decision. I need you to contact Dieter Muller at my private bank in Zurich. Authentication code 4729 Alpha Vega Epsilon. Tell him to activate contingency protocol Obsidian. Bill raised an eyebrow. May I ask what that entails? It will unlock certain resources and transfer operational authority to a set of predefined trustees. Most importantly, it will lock down my private holdings in a way that no court-ordered conservatorship can touch. And these resources are substantial? Let's just say they dwarf what Jonas believes I possess. I smiled thinly. Enough to fund whatever operations we need. Bill nodded, clearly reassessing the situation. What else do you need? I considered our immediate challenges. Technical resources. I need to know exactly what happened to my plane, not just the NTSB report. I need our people to examine the wreckage directly. Already in progress. We've had a team embedded with the investigation since day one. Good. I also need information on Jonas's recent activities, financial transactions, travel, communications, everything. We've been monitoring what we can legally access, but his personal devices use the resources I'm unlocking through Dieter. This is no longer about legal niceties. If Jonas is working with foreign interests to compromise critical security infrastructure, we're operating in national security territory. Bill's expression shifted subtly, the former FBI agent recognizing the implications. Understood. What? About your medical situation? Dr. Reeves mentioned potential transfer to another facility. I need to delay that transfer while appearing to remain significantly impaired. And I need to continue my physical rehabilitation clandestinely. I can arrange for a black tech security team member with medical training to join the hospital staff. We have several former military medics on the team. Our conversation was interrupted by a soft knock, Ava's signal that someone was approaching. Bill quickly gathered his equipment, restored the listening devices to operational status, and resumed his maintenance worker persona. Air conditioning should be working properly now, ma'am, he said in a louder voice as Ava entered with her. Warning look. Just call if you have any further issues. As he left, I returned to my position of apparent semi-consciousness, my mind racing with plans. Jonas believed he was moving his pieces into position for a final victory. He had no idea I was already counterattacking from the shadows. The first significant obstacle emerged just 24 hours after Bill's visit. Jonas arrived unexpectedly during the afternoon shift change, a calculated move that caught Ava off guard as she was leaving and introduced me to a new night nurse I hadn't met before. This is Nurse Rebecca, Jonas announced with practiced charm. She'll be handling your care moving forward. The hospital administration agreed that having consistent nursing staff would be beneficial for your condition. Rebecca smiled blandly, already arranging items on the medication cart. She was middle-aged, efficient-looking, and completely unfamiliar. More concerning was the absence of any prior notice about this staffing change. I maintained my facade of minimal responsiveness, but internally alarms were blaring. This was a deliberate move to separate me from Ava, my most reliable ally within the hospital. Mr. Blackwood has been so concerned about consistency in your care, Rebecca commented as she checked my IV. He's arranged for me to be your dedicated nurse for all shifts going forward. Jonas watched me closely as Rebecca spoke, perhaps looking for signs that I understood the implications. I kept my expression vacant, my responses limited to occasional blinks and slight finger movements. The transfer paperwork for Lakeview is being processed, Jonas continued, addressing Rebecca rather than me. Dr. Reeves is still hesitant, but I've spoken with the hospital administration. They agree that specialized long-term care is appropriate, given the circumstances. The emphasis he placed on circumstances sent a chill through me. He was accelerating his timeline, bypassing Dr. Reeves by going directly to hospital administration. When is the transfer scheduled? Rebecca asked, adjusting my medication drip. 3 days from now. The air ambulance is already arranged. 3 days? Not the week or two Dr. Reeves had promised. Jonas was moving faster than anticipated, and he'd successfully removed Ava from my care. I needed to adapt quickly. After Jonas left, Rebecca continued her methodical work, checking monitors and updating charts. Her efficiency was concerning. She rarely left the room, limiting any opportunity for me to use the secure device Bill had provided. When she finally stepped out briefly to retrieve something from the supply room, I quickly checked the medication. IV bag sheet hung. The label indicated a standard saline solution with prescribed pain management, but something felt off. The insertion point on the bag showed signs of secondary injection, a tiny puncture mark that would be easily overlooked, unless specifically examining for it. Was Rebecca medicating me with something unauthorized? I couldn't be certain, but I couldn't risk it either. When she returned, I tracked her movements through slitted eyes. Her charting was meticulous, her manner professional, nothing overtly suspicious except for her sudden appointment by Jonas. By evening, I was fighting an unusual drowsiness that hadn't been present before. My thoughts became sluggish, my planning less coherent. This wasn't my normal medication response. Something was definitely wrong. I had only moments of clarity to formulate a response. If Rebecca was indeed administering unauthorized sedatives, or worse, I needed to avoid receiving more while maintaining my charade. The IV was the most likely delivery method. During one of Rebecca's brief bathroom breaks, I carefully loosened the IV connection at my arm, not removing it completely, but creating a small leak that would reduce the flow while appearing normal. I positioned my arm to allow the excess fluid to drip onto the bed sheets rather than into my bloodstream. The night progressed with increasing difficulty. Fighting the effects of whatever medication had already entered my system required all my concentration. Rebecca checked on me hourly, seeming satisfied with my deepening unresponsiveness. By morning, my sheets were damp with diverted IV fluid, but my mind was clearer. I'd managed to minimize whatever was being administered while giving the appearance of compliance. The real challenge came when Dr. Reeves arrived for morning rounds. Rebecca summarized my night, describing decreased responsiveness and minimal neurological activity. Dr. Reeves frowned, reviewing the chart. These readings don't align with her patterns from 2 days ago. What medication changes have been implemented? Just what's prescribed, Rebecca replied smoothly. Mr. Blackwood mentioned you might be concerned about the fluctuations. He said the neurologist he consulted expected this pattern of decline. Neurologist? Dr. Reeves's voice sharpened. I didn't authorize an external consultation. I believe hospital administration approved it. Mr. Blackwood has the documentation. This exchange confirmed my fears. Jonas was systematically removing obstacles and creating a paper trail of my supposed decline to justify the rapid transfer. He had outmaneuvered us by going above Dr. Reeves directly to administration. When Rebecca stepped out to accommodate Dr. Reeves's request for privacy during her examination, the doctor leaned close to me. Blink twice if you can understand me, she whispered urgently. I blinked twice, deliberately. Something's wrong with your readings. Are you being medicated without authorization? 2 more blinks. Can you speak? I made a slight negative movement, afraid Rebecca might return at any moment. Dr. Reeves nodded, understanding the danger. I'm ordering new labs and removing the current IV. If anyone questions it, I'll cite concerns about infiltration at the insertion site. She swiftly disconnected the IV, replacing it with a new line that she personally verified from an unopened bag. The transfer has been expedited, she murmured while working. I've objected medically, but I'm being overruled. Whatever you're planning needs to happen within 48 hours. As Rebecca returned, Dr. Reeves straightened, resuming her professional demeanor. The IV site was showing signs of infiltration. I've replaced it and ordered additional blood work to check for possible infection. Rebecca's eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in her professional facade. Mr. Blackwood prefers to be notified of any medication changes. I'm sure he does, Dr. Reeves replied coolly. As Ms. Blackwood's attending physician, however, I make the medical decisions. You can inform him when he visits. The first obstacle, Jonas's planted nurse and unauthorized medication, had been temporarily countered, but the accelerated transfer timeline meant we were rapidly running out of time and options. With Rebecca temporarily occupied by Dr. Reeves's demands for additional tests, I finally had a moment to access the secure device Bill had provided. My fingers moved swiftly across the screen, accessing files BlackTech Security had compiled on Jonas. What emerged was a disturbing portrait of deception that predated our relationship entirely. Jonas Blackwood wasn't even his real name. He was born Anders Carlson in Stockholm, Sweden, before assuming multiple identities across Europe in his 20s. His background in investment consulting was largely fabricated, built on a series of short-term positions with legitimate firms where he gained credentials without making significant contributions. More disturbing were his connections before our meeting. He had previously been romantically linked to the daughter of a Russian oligarch with known intelligence connections, and later to the widow of a Chinese tech manufacturer whose company had been investigated for intellectual property theft. A pattern emerged. Jonas targeted wealthy, powerful women, particularly those with access to valuable information or technology. I wasn't his first mark. I was simply his most ambitious target. But the most chilling discovery came in the form of banking records that BlackTech's security team had uncovered. 3 months before my accident, an offshore account linked to Jonas had received a payment of $2 million from a shell company that BlackTech had previously flagged for its connections to Westridge Capital. This wasn't opportunistic theft by a greedy spouse. This was a carefully orchestrated operation years in the making. As I dug deeper, connections between Westridge Capital and various foreign interests became clearer. Westridge wasn't just an aggressive investment firm. It was a sophisticated front for a consortium of interests seeking control of advanced encryption technology. The principals had links to both corporate and state-sponsored espionage operations. My technology was the target. Jonas was merely the vector, the carefully placed agent tasked with gaining access to what they couldn't steal directly. The betrayal cut deeper than I had imagined. Every moment of our relationship, from our chance meeting at the charity gala to his marriage proposal on the beach in Maui, had been calculated. His apparent acceptance of my work schedule, his encouragement of my ambitions, his seeming contentment with his modest career alongside my success, all carefully crafted manipulations. I forced myself to push past the personal betrayal and focus on the operational implications. If Jonas was working with Westridge and their foreign backers, the threat extended far beyond my personal fortune or even BlackTech as a company. The quantum encryption protocols I had developed protected critical infrastructure worldwide. In the wrong hands, they could be compromised, creating vulnerabilities across financial systems, power grids, defense networks, and more. What had begun as a personal fight for survival had escalated into something with potential national security implications. My reflections were interrupted by an incoming secure message from Clara. Obsidian Protocol activated per your instructions. Resources deployed. Preliminary investigation of aircraft wreckage confirms tampering with fuel delivery system, consistent with controlled failure rather than catastrophic explosion. Designed to appear as accident while maximizing survival chances. The confirmation of sabotage wasn't surprising given what I now knew, but the nature of it revealed something important. Jonas and his backers needed me alive. Dead, my biometrics. Keys would be useless to them. They needed me incapacitated but accessible, a living key that could be manipulated or coerced. This realization provided both clarity and leverage. They wouldn't risk killing me until they had what they needed. The planned transfer to Lakeview wasn't intended as my final destination. It was a controlled environment where they could work on extracting what they needed without interference. Another message from Clara followed. Bill has placed 2 team members on hospital staff. Anders, orderly, and Maya, janitorial. Both former special forces with medical training. They will make contact using maintenance protocol. Transfer to Lakeview must be prevented. Facility investigation confirms it's controlled by Shell Company. Linked to Westridge. My suspicions about Lakeview were confirmed. Once there, I would be completely under their control, with no allies and no way to communicate with the outside world. Whatever they planned to do to extract my biometric and cognitive keys would happen there, away from witnesses or potential interference. Rebecca returned, her professional demeanor firmly back in place, though I detected underlying tension. Doctor. Reeves had clearly rattled her by asserting medical authority. Your doctor has ordered quite a battery of tests, she commented while checking my new IV. It seems excessive given your condition. I maintained my vacant expression, giving only the minimal responses I'd established as my baseline. Rebecca seemed satisfied with my apparent docility, making notes in my chart before adjusting the blinds. Your husband called, she mentioned, casually. He's bringing someone from Lakeview tomorrow to assess transport requirements. He's very eager to get you settled there. Says they have better facilities for long-term cases like yours. The timeline was compressing further. Not 3 days now, but potentially as soon as tomorrow. I needed to accelerate our countermeasures, but I was effectively a prisoner in my own hospital room, under constant surveillance from Jonas's planted nurse. My next moves would require precise timing and coordination with Bill's team. The secure device showed a scheduled check-in with Anders the orderly in approximately 2 hours. Until then, I had to maintain my charade while finalizing my strategy. The more I learned about Jonas and his backers, the clearer it became that this was no longer just about my survival or reclaiming my fortune. It was about preventing a sophisticated espionage operation from acquiring technology that could compromise global security. Anders the orderly made his appearance precisely on schedule, entering my room with a wheelchair and a carefully neutral expression. Time for your CT scan, Ms. Blackwood, he announced, loudly enough for Rebecca to hear from her position by the monitors. Rebecca frowned slightly. I don't have a CT scan on the schedule. Anders presented an official-looking order form. Dr. Reeves added it this morning. Something about establishing a new baseline before transport evaluation. As Rebecca examined the form, I caught the subtle nod Anders directed my way, confirmation that he was Bill's planted operative. He was younger than I expected, perhaps. Early 30s with the controlled movements and alertness characteristic of someone with tactical training. I should accompany the patient, Rebecca insisted, clearly reluctant to let me out of her sight. Hospital policy requires you to remain with your other assigned patients, Anders countered smoothly. I'm fully certified for patient transport. I'll have her back within the hour. Rebecca hesitated, then relented, likely unwilling to create a scene that might draw unwanted attention. Her condition can change rapidly. Be aware she may become non-responsive. Understood. Anders carefully transferred me to the wheelchair, maintaining the pretense that I was largely unresponsive as he arranged blankets around my legs. Once we were in the elevator and alone, Anders spoke quietly. Security cameras in the elevator. But no audio. Maintain your current presentation until we reach the basement level. I gave an almost imperceptible nod, remaining slumped in the wheelchair. When the elevator doors opened on the basement level, Anders wheeled me not toward radiology, but down a service corridor to a small maintenance room. He quickly checked for surveillance devices before locking the door behind us. Clear to speak. Freely, Ms. Blackwood. We have approximately 30 minutes before anyone becomes suspicious. I straightened in the wheelchair, relieved to drop the charade temporarily. Is everything in place? Operation is proceeding on multiple fronts, Anders confirmed. Maya has secured the service entrance. Bill and Clara are coordinating externally. Your private banking contacts have been extraordinarily effective. The resources deployed through Obsidian Protocol have exceeded expectations. And the Lakeview situation? Confirmed as a hostile facility. Staff includes at least 3 operatives with foreign intelligence backgrounds. Medical equipment recently installed appears designed for interrogation rather than care. I suppressed a shudder at the implication. What assets do we have available immediately? In addition to Maya and myself inside the hospital, we have a 4-person tactical team on standby within 3 minutes of the building. Clara has established a secure facility 20 miles from here, former corporate retreat with medical capabilities, now privately owned through one of your shell companies. Transport options? 3 separate vehicles prepared, plus helicopter contingency if needed. Primary concern is creating sufficient diversion to extract you without Jonas or his Westridge contacts realizing until you're secured. Jonas is bringing Lakeview representatives tomorrow, I noted. That accelerates our timeline. Anders nodded grimly. Bill anticipated this. We can be ready tonight if necessary. Not yet. There's something else I need first. I hesitated, then explained my suspicion about what Jonas and Westridge ultimately wanted. They need my biometric and cognitive keys to access the core encryption protocols. That means they'll need specialized equipment to extract them, either cooperatively or forcibly. Anders understood immediately. You want to identify the extraction technology before we move. Exactly. If we can document their methods and intentions, this becomes more than escaping a greedy husband. It becomes provable corporate espionage and potentially treason. We spent the next 10 minutes outlining a modified plan. Rather than immediate extraction, we would use the Lakeview evaluation visit as an opportunity to gather intelligence and evidence. Maya would plant surveillance devices during her janitorial rounds, focusing on capturing any specialized equipment the Lakeview team brought for assessment. One more thing, I added. I need 5 minutes with Dr. Reeves before we return upstairs. Anders checked his watch. Cutting it close, but doable. She should be finishing rounds on the 2nd floor now. He wheeled me through service corridors to an empty consultation room, then stepped out briefly to locate Dr. Reeves. When they returned, the doctor's expression showed both concern and determination. This is incredibly risky, she said, after Anders explained our modified plan. The medications Rebecca was adding to your IV contained strong sedatives and memory-affecting compounds. If you'd received the full doses, I'd be genuinely non-responsive and experiencing anterograde amnesia. I finished. Perfect for someone they want compliant and unable to form new memories. Dr. Reeves nodded grimly. I've documented everything, but hospital administration is pressuring me to approve the transfer. Mr. Blackwood apparently has significant influence with several board members. I need you to approve the transfer, I said, surprising both of them. That puts you directly in their hands, Dr. Reeves objected. Not if we control the timing and execution. I outlined my thinking. Approve the transfer conditionally for the day after tomorrow. Insist on specific medical protocols that give us room to maneuver. Meanwhile, document everything the Lakeview team brings tomorrow for their evaluation. They're likely to bring portable versions of whatever extraction technology they've installed at Lakeview, Anders added, understanding my strategy. To verify you're viable for their purposes. Dr. Reeves considered this. I can insist on reviewing all equipment as attending physician, require detailed explanations of purpose, and I can ensure those explanations are recorded, Anders confirmed. As our planning concluded, Anders checked his watch again. We need to move. Rebecca will be getting suspicious. Dr. Reeves handed me a small device. Subdermal emergency transmitter. Press hard against your skin to activate if you're in immediate danger. It'll alert hospital security instantly. I concealed the device as Anders returned me to my performance of semi-consciousness. As he wheeled me back toward the elevator, I felt a new sense of confidence. We had begun with just Ava as my lone ally. Now I had a growing team of skilled operatives, financial resources, and a strategy taking shape. The alliance was building. Tomorrow would be the test of whether it was enough. That night, while Rebecca took her mandated break, Maya the janitor entered my room under the pretext of emptying trash cans. After confirming we weren't being observed, she quickly placed several microscopic surveillance devices in strategic locations: the television stand, the overhead light fixture, and the visitor chair Jonas typically used. "All units broadcasting to secure server," she whispered, while wiping down surfaces as cover for her activities. "Voice activated with noise filtering. We'll catch everything they say tomorrow." I acknowledged with our established signal. 3 slow blinks. Maya completed her routine cleaning tasks, then left with a barely perceptible nod. Through the secure tablet hidden beneath my blankets, I received the final strategy brief from Bill and Clara just after midnight. The plan had evolved into a sophisticated 3-phase operation. Phase 1. Intelligence gathering. Document Lakeview team's evaluation methods and equipment. Capture explicit statements of intent if possible. Identify all hostile personnel involved in. Transfer planning Phase 2. Controlled transfer approval, Dr. Reeves approves transfer conditionally for specific time window technical requirements established that require BlackTech security, review transport route, predetermined to allow for intervention. Phase 3. Extraction and counterstrike extraction. Team intercepts, transfer vehicle at predetermined location. Secondary team secures evidence from hospital room. Digital strike neutralizes Jonas and Westridge's financial capabilities. Legal team files emergency injunctions based on gathered evidence, the C. Extraction location was set for a specific curve along the rural route to Lakeview, where limited sight lines and cell coverage would provide optimal conditions for vehicle transfer without alerting Jonas's team. The counterstrike element was my personal addition to the plan. Rather than merely escaping with my life and fortune intact, I intended to turn the tables completely. Clara had already positioned lawyers ready to file multiple emergency motions the moment we had actionable evidence, restraining orders against Jonas, injunctions against Westridge Capital, and notifications to relevant authorities about potential espionage. Meanwhile, through my Obsidian Protocol resources, we had established a digital kill switch that would freeze all accounts connected to Jonas and his Westridge backers simultaneously. The activation code was set, appropriately enough, to contingency. The most complex aspect of the plan involved maintaining my cover until the precise moment of extraction. I would need to continue appearing significantly impaired during the Lakeview team's evaluation, convincing enough that they would proceed with transfer plans while not so incapacitated that they might determine I was unsuitable for their purposes. As dawn approached, I mentally rehearsed my performance. I needed to show minimal responsiveness, enough to confirm my cognitive functions were intact beneath the apparent impairment, but not enough to suggest I was aware of their plans. Too little response might convince them I was worthless for their biometric needs. Too much might alert them to my awareness. Dr. Reeves would help by providing a medical cover story of fluctuating consciousness with periods of potential lucidity. A description vague enough to explain any response level while suggesting I might be manipulable for their purposes. The financial components of our plan were particularly satisfying. Clara had identified not only Jonas's known accounts, but also the previously hidden ones he believed were untraceable. Through the Obsidian Protocol resources, we had inserted monitoring software into the banking systems handling these accounts, not to steal from them, but to freeze them instantly when activated. "The irony is exquisite," Clara had commented during our secure communication. "He thought he was stealing your fortune, but really, you're about to demonstrate what financial control truly means." Bill's security team had developed a parallel strategy for the physical extraction. Rather than preventing the transfer entirely, which might simply delay Jonas's plans, we would allow it to proceed under controlled conditions. The ambulance company contracted for my transfer had been quietly replaced with one staffed by former military personnel now working for BlackTech Security. The transfer route had been predetermined with specific locations identified for evidence collection and, if necessary, emergency extraction. The key is maintaining operational flexibility while ensuring chain of custody for all evidence. Bill had explained. "We're not just saving you, we're building an airtight case." Martin Winters, my attorney, had prepared legal filings for every day possible scenario, ready to be submitted electronically the moment we had sufficient evidence. He had also secured a preliminary hearing with Judge Forrester, known for both her discretion and her strict interpretation of fiduciary duty in cases involving incapacitated individuals. Jonas violated not just ethical, but legal boundaries when he began liquidating your assets, Martin had noted. Combined with the evidence of medical manipulation, we have grounds for emergency injunctions across multiple jurisdictions. The final element of our strategy involved Black Tech itself. Omar Khalid, the interim CEO, had been quietly briefed on the situation through secure channels. While kept separate from the operational details for deniability, he had implemented enhanced security protocols for all company systems, particularly those controlling the quantum encryption architecture. "The company is secure," Clara had assured me. "Any attempt to access core systems without proper authentication will trigger immediate lockdowns and notifications." By morning, all elements were in position. The strategy was set. When Jonas arrived, with the Lakeview team at 10 a.m., we would begin gathering the evidence needed to destroy him and his backers completely. As the first light of dawn filtered through my hospital window, I felt a cold determination replace the fear and betrayal that had dominated my thoughts since awakening. Jonas had thought me a helpless victim. He was about to discover just how catastrophically he had underestimated me. At 7 a.m., Rebecca performed her morning assessment, noting my continued minimal responsiveness in the chart. I maintained the careful balance of appearing impaired while showing just enough neurological function to make me valuable to their plans. When she tested pain responses, I gave delayed reactions. When she checked pupillary response, I allowed slight but sluggish dilation. "Your visitors will be here in a few hours," she mentioned casually while adjusting my blankets. "The Lakeview team is bringing their medical director. They need to evaluate your condition themselves before finalizing transfer protocols." I gave no indication of understanding, but mentally noted that the medical director would likely be key to whatever technology they planned to use for extracting my biometric data. At 8:30, Anders arrived for what was documented as respiratory therapy. This provided cover for final preparation. "Surveillance activated and tested," he confirmed quietly while performing legitimate respiratory assessment for any observers. Maya intercepted the equipment manifest from the Lakeview team. "They're bringing neurological assessment technology not standard for transfer evaluations." While maintaining the therapy facade, Anders placed a nearly invisible communication device behind my ear, advanced Black Tech technology that would allow the team to communicate with me through bone conduction, undetectable to normal observation. "Doctor Reeves is prepared to challenge unusual equipment or procedures," he continued. "She'll insist on detailed explanations for any non-standard assessments. Everything will be recorded." Anders also revealed a crucial development. "Your attorney has secured an emergency court hearing for 1 p.m. today. Judge Forrester, known for her strict stance on medical ethics. Once we have documented evidence from this morning's evaluation, we file immediately." This accelerated timeline was risky but potentially decisive. If the Lakeview team revealed enough about their true intentions during their evaluation, we could secure legal intervention before the transfer could proceed. At 9:15, Dr. Reeves conducted her own assessment, creating the official medical baseline against which the Lakeview evaluation would be compared. While checking my reflexes, she whispered, "I've documented your true condition in confidential records time-stamped and witnessed by 2 trusted colleagues. Whatever happens today, we have proof of your actual neurological status." The final preparation came at 9:45, when Ava, who had been barred from my direct care but remained on hospital staff, managed a brief visit under the pretext of delivering laboratory results. Rebecca's distracted with paperwork at the nurses' station, she murmured. "Jonas is already downstairs with 2 people from Lakeview. One looks medical, the other more corporate. They're bringing in equipment cases. This was earlier than expected. Jonas was likely trying to avoid too much scrutiny by arriving before the officially scheduled time. I squeezed Ava's hand slightly to signal understanding. "Security team alerted," came Bill's voice through the bone conduction device moments after Ava left. "Jonas and team approaching elevator now. Standard medical equipment cases externally, but thermal imaging shows powered devices inside. Stand by for engagement." I closed my eyes, regulated my breathing, and prepared for the most important performance of my life. The preparation phase was complete. Now everything depended on extracting the evidence we needed from Jonas and the Lakeview team without alerting them to our awareness or intentions. Through the tiny speaker behind my ear, I heard Bill's final instruction. "Operation Obsidian is a go. All units in position. Jasmine, they're approaching your door now." The door swung open as Jonas entered first, his carefully crafted concerned husband expression firmly in place. Behind him followed two individuals, a woman in her 50s wearing a lab coat with Dr. Helen Winters, medical director, embroidered on the pocket, and a sharply dressed man carrying what appeared to be a standard medical case. "Good morning." "Rebecca," Jonas greeted the nurse with practiced charm. "How is my wife today?" "Consistent with previous assessments," Rebecca replied. "Limited responsiveness, but stable vital signs." Jonas approached my bed, taking my hand in what would appear to anyone watching as a loving gesture. "Hello, darling," he said, his voice gentle while his eyes remained calculating. "I've brought some doctors who are going to help move you to a better facility, somewhere peaceful where you can get the care you need." I gave the minimal response I'd established, a slight flutter of eyelids, a faint twitch of fingers, while studying him through barely open eyes. It was strange seeing him now, knowing what I knew. The handsome features that had once seemed so sincere now appeared as nothing more than a carefully constructed mask. "Dr. Winters," Jonas continued, turning to the woman, "this is my wife, Jasmine. As you can see, her condition remains largely unchanged." Dr. Winters approached, her clinical gaze assessing me with unsettling intensity. "How responsive has she been to cognitive stimuli tests?" "Minimal," Rebecca supplied. "Basic reflexes only. And the EEG patterns? Consistent with severe diffuse axonal injury, some subcortical activity but limited higher function. I recognize the deliberate mischaracterization of my condition. My actual medical records showed significantly more promising indicators, but Jonas's planted nurse was painting a picture of near vegetative state while preserving the possibility of usable brain function." Dr. Winters turned to her companion. "Mr. Riker, let's proceed with the advanced assessment." The man set his case on the visitor's table and opened it, revealing equipment that was decidedly not standard medical gear. While designed to resemble conventional neurological testing equipment, the components included what appeared to be advanced biometric scanners and neural interface technology. "What exactly is this equipment?" Dr. Reeves's voice came from the doorway, her timing perfect. She entered with a tablet in hand, immediately establishing her authority by checking my monitors. "Advanced neural mapping technology," Dr. Winters answered smoothly. "Helps us establish the appropriate care protocols for transfer." "I'm not familiar with this model," Dr. Reeves noted, examining the equipment. "Are these FDA approved for clinical use?" "Prototype technology," Riker interjected. "Lakeview is participating in a research initiative for assessment of minimally conscious patients." Dr. Reeves frowned. "Any experimental procedures require explicit consent and ethics board approval. I don't see documentation for either in Ms. Blackwood's file." "Mr. Blackwood has power of attorney," Dr. Winters countered. "He's authorized advanced assessment methods." Through my nearly closed eyes, I saw Jonas shift uncomfortably. This was the moment, the point where their intentions might be revealed. "Perhaps we should speak privately," Jonas suggested, gesturing toward the hallway. I prefer to discuss my patient's care here, Dr. Reeves insisted. What specifically does this equipment measure that standard neurological assessment doesn't? Riker hesitated, then spoke with careful precision. It maps neural pathways associated with recognition and authentication processes, particularly useful for patients with Ms. Blackwood's unique cognitive patterns. There it was, the first explicit reference to what they were really after. My authentication patterns for Black Tech's security systems. For medical purposes? Dr. Reeves pressed. Among others, Dr. Winters responded vaguely. Mr. Blackwood has explained his wife's work requires certain security verifications. This equipment helps determine if those functions remain intact despite her condition. Through the bone conduction device, I heard Bill's voice. We've got it. Clear admission. Of intent to access security systems. Proceeding with legal filing now. We had crossed the point of no return. The evidence was being gathered, the trap was closing, and Jonas had no idea he was the one being ensnared. I'd like to see the authorization for this specialized equipment, Dr. Reeves insisted, maintaining the pressure. Hospital protocols require documentation for all non-standard devices, particularly those collecting biometric data. While Jonas and the Lakeview team fumbled for responses, I focused on executing my part of the plan. Through barely parted eyelids, I watched Riker continuing to assemble the neural mapping equipment clearly designed to extract the precise brainwave patterns associated with my quantum encryption authentication protocols. Of course, Dr. Winters replied smoothly, producing a folder. We have all the necessary authorizations here, signed by Mr. Blackwood as medical proxy. Dr. Reeves took the documents, reviewing them with deliberate slowness while our surveillance devices captured every word and image. These forms don't specify the nature of the data being collected or its intended use. That's problematic. Jonas stepped forward, his patience visibly thinning. Dr. Reeves, I appreciate your thoroughness, but these decisions fall under my authority as my wife's designated proxy. The Lakeview team is simply conducting preliminary assessments to ensure proper care protocols. Actually, came a new voice from the doorway. That's not entirely accurate. Martin Winters, my personal attorney, stood in the entrance, flanked by Anders in his orderly uniform. Jonas's face registered momentary shock before he recovered his composure. This is a private medical consultation, Jonas stated firmly. You have no authority to be here. On the contrary, Martin replied, presenting a document. I've just come from Judge Forrester's chambers with an emergency injunction temporarily suspending your medical proxy authority pending investigation of potential conflicts of interest. The room froze. Through the bone conduction device, Bill's voice confirmed. Phase 2 initiating. Extraction team in position. Financial lockdown in 3 minutes. Jonas's face darkened. This is absurd. On what grounds? On the grounds that you may be acting against your wife's interests, Martin interrupted, turning to Dr. Reeves. The court has appointed Dr. Reeves as temporary medical guardian until Ms. Blackwood's true condition can be independently assessed. Dr. Winters stepped forward. We have a signed transfer agreement. Which is now suspended, Martin countered, handing another document to Dr. Reeves. The court has prohibited any transfer pending full neurological assessment by independent specialists. Rebecca, sensing the shift in power, moved toward the door only to find Maya blocking her exit. The carefully orchestrated plan was unfolding perfectly, each team member executing their role with precision. Mr. Blackwood, Martin continued, the court has also frozen all financial transactions requiring your wife's authorization pending investigation. I'm afraid that includes the recent property sales and account transfers you've initiated. Jonas's composure cracked. You can't, who authorized this? I did, I said clearly, opening my eyes fully and sitting up in bed. The shock that registered on Jonas's face was everything I had hoped for, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and the dawning realization that his carefully constructed scheme was collapsing. "That's impossible," Dr. Winters stammered. "Her condition has been deliberately misrepresented," Dr. Reeves interjected, "primarily by the nursing staff you arranged to have assigned to her care." Rebecca attempted to push past Maya, but Anders stepped forward, blocking her completely. "Hospital security has been notified," he stated firmly. "No one leaves until they arrive." Through my earpiece, Bill confirmed. "Financial protocols executed. All identified accounts frozen. Phase 3 initiated." The plan was working perfectly. Jonas stood frozen, his scheme unraveling before his eyes, as I continued to rise from the bed that was supposed to have been my prison. "Hello, Jonas," I said, my voice stronger than he'd heard it in months. "We need to talk about the plane crash you arranged." Jonas's face cycled through emotions. Shock, calculation, and finally a cold determination I'd never witnessed during our marriage. The mask had fully slipped. "You have no proof of anything," he said, his accent subtly shifting away from the polished American tones he'd always used with me toward something with European undertones. "A confused woman making wild accusations after brain trauma, who would believe you?" "They'll believe the evidence," I replied calmly. "The tampered fuel line in my plane, the offshore payments to your account before the crash, your meetings with Westridge Capital executives 3 weeks before my accident, your forged signatures on power of attorney documents." With each item I listed, Jonas's expression hardened. Dr. Winters and Riker exchanged alarmed glances, clearly calculating their own exposure. "This specialized equipment is particularly interesting," I continued, gesturing toward their neural mapping device. "Designed specifically to extract authentication patterns from my brain without my conscious cooperation. That suggests premeditation far beyond simple financial opportunism." "You don't understand what's at stake," Jonas said, abandoning pretense entirely. "Your encryption technology has implications beyond your small-minded corporate ambitions." "I understand perfectly," I countered. "Quantum authentication protocols that can't be broken by conventional means. Access keys that require both my biometrics and cognitive patterns. Technology that protects critical infrastructure worldwide." I leaned forward. "And people willing to commit murder to control it," Dr. Winters attempted to interject. "We're simply medical professionals facilitating." "Your agents facilitating corporate espionage and potentially treason," I interrupted. "Your Lakeview facility is equipped with neural extraction technology developed by foreign intelligence services. We have the building plans, equipment manifests, and staff backgrounds. Quite the operation you've assembled." Hospital security appeared at the doorway, responding to the alert. Jonas made one final attempt. "You've been in a coma," he said loudly, for the benefit of the security officers. "You're confused, delusional. These people are taking advantage of your condition." "That's why I insisted on comprehensive documentation," I replied. "Every conversation in this room has been recorded. Every document presented has been captured. The neural extraction equipment you brought today has been photographed, and its specifications logged." I gestured toward the ceiling corners where Maya had placed the microscopic cameras. "Including your admission moments ago that my small-minded corporate ambitions don't account for what's really at stake with my encryption technology." Jonas's expression shifted as he realized the depth of the trap. He lunged suddenly toward me, only to be intercepted by Anders with remarkable efficiency. Within seconds, Jonas was restrained, his desperation evident as security officers moved to assist. "It's over, Jonas," I said as he struggled against his restraints. "Or should I say Anders Carlson? Your accounts are frozen. Your Westridge backers are being investigated as we speak. The evidence has already been distributed to multiple secure locations." Dr. Winters and Riker were similarly detained, their equipment confiscated by security personnel operating under Dr. Reeves's authorization. "One thing I'm curious about," I said, meeting Jonas's eyes directly. Was any of it real, or was I just a target from the beginning? For just a moment, something flickered in his expression. Perhaps regret, perhaps just calculation. Then his face hardened again. You were impressive, he said coldly. More thorough in your precautions than anyone anticipated. That's why they wanted you alive. Dead, your security protocols would have been permanently inaccessible. And now they're still inaccessible, I replied. But you're going to prison. As security escorted Jonas and his accomplices from the room, Martin approached with a satisfied expression. Judge Forrester has granted all our emergency motions, he reported. And the FBI is very interested in the Westridge connection. Their agents are already at their offices. I nodded, feeling a complex mixture of vindication and exhaustion. The climactic confrontation was over, and I had reclaimed control of my life, my company, and my future. Yet something told me the repercussions were only beginning. The hospital room transformed into an impromptu command center in the hours following Jonas's arrest. Dr. Reeves officially upgraded my medical status, documenting my true cognitive function while maintaining security protocols. Hospital administration representatives arrived, ashen-faced upon learning of the compromised staff and falsified records within their facility. We had no idea, the chief medical officer insisted, reviewing Rebecca's documentation. The credentials she presented were impeccable. They were expertly forged, Bill confirmed, now openly operating as Black Tech's head of security. We've identified at least 3 other facilities where similar infiltration occurred. This operation was sophisticated and well-funded. While this debriefing continued, Clara appeared with updates on the financial front. We've recovered nearly everything, she reported, sitting beside my bed with her tablet. The $2.4 million from the house sale was still in escrow, easily reversed. Most offshore transfers were frozen before completion. Total losses appear to be under $800,000. Primarily the funds Jonas spent on living expenses and establishing Meredith in her cramped condo. And my hidden assets? Clara smiled. Completely secure. The Obsidian Protocol worked perfectly. The trustees never released control, despite several sophisticated attempts to circumvent the authentication systems. Martin joined us with further news. FBI counterintelligence is treating this as a national security case. They've already collected substantial evidence from Westridge Capital's offices and detained 4 executives for questioning. What about Meredith? I asked, curious about the woman who had expected to enjoy my fortune with Jonas. Picked up at her apartment, Bill replied. Initial questioning suggests she was mostly unaware of the larger operation. She believed Jonas was simply taking advantage of his wealthy, comatose wife. Morally reprehensible, but not espionage. I nodded, unsurprised. Jonas would have compartmentalized, revealing only what each person needed to know for their part in his scheme. Dr. Reeves approached with my official discharge paperwork. Medically, you're cleared to leave. Your recovery is remarkable, though I still recommend physical therapy to address residual weakness from prolonged bed rest. Already arranged, Bill confirmed. The secure facility is fully staffed, including medical personnel with appropriate clearance. As preparations for my departure continued, Ava slipped into the room during a quiet moment. I wanted to say goodbye, she said, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and concern. And to make sure you're really okay. Thanks to you, I replied, taking her hand. You risked everything to help a patient you barely knew. Ava shook her head. I just did what was right, but I never imagined. She gestured around at the security team, the legal representatives, the evidence being cataloged. Who are you, really? I smiled. Just someone who learned early to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Before leaving the hospital, I insisted on a brief detour to the small waiting area where I had first regained consciousness weeks earlier. The same window overlooked the same courtyard, but everything else had changed. Clara joined me there. "The board is expecting your call. They're ecstatic you're alive and well, though rather shocked by the extent of the conspiracy. And the company? Stock jumped 12% when news broke that you were recovering. The interim leadership handled things adequately, but everyone's eager for your return." I nodded, watching leaves scatter in the courtyard below. "Not yet. There's something more important I need to do first." "Which is?" I turned from the window. "Understand exactly who was behind this. Jonas and Westridge were just the visible pieces. I want to know who was really pulling the strings." "That could be dangerous," Clara cautioned. "So, is leaving enemies who targeted you once to try again?" I replied. "I'm not just reclaiming my life, Clara. I'm securing it against future threats." As we headed toward the secure exit where transportation waited, I felt a profound shift within myself. The woman who had trusted Jonas, who had believed in the possibility of partnership without complete transparency, was gone. In her place stood someone harder, more vigilant, and absolutely determined to hold accountable everyone who had conspired against her. The immediate crisis was resolved, but the true reckoning was just beginning. 6 months after what the media had dubbed the Blackwood Conspiracy, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, watching the Seattle skyline glitter under a rare, clear winter sky. The view was different. My former headquarters had been compromised, necessitating a complete relocation. But the sense of purpose was stronger than ever. The transformation had been comprehensive. Black Tech Innovations was now Obsidian Secure, bringing my hidden operations into the light, but under carefully controlled terms. The company's focus had sharpened, advancing quantum authentication technologies while actively protecting them from compromise. The investigation into Jonas and his backers had revealed a network more extensive than anyone initially suspected. Westridge Capital proved to be merely one node in a sophisticated public-private partnership involving elements from 3 foreign intelligence services and numerous corporate fronts. The FBI's counterintelligence division had made 17 arrests across 6 countries, with more pending as evidence continued to emerge. Jonas himself had negotiated a limited plea deal in exchange for information, though he would still serve a minimum of 15 years for attempted murder, fraud, and espionage-related charges. During my only visit to see him in federal custody, he had seemed diminished, his charm replaced by a bitter pragmatism. "They would have killed me too, eventually," he had admitted across the visitation room table. "Once they had what they needed from you." I hadn't asked which they he meant. By then, I already knew more than he did about the full scope of the operation. My personal transformation had been equally profound. The weeks of rehabilitation at the secure facility had rebuilt my physical strength, but the experience had hardened something within me that would never again be soft. Trust, once given freely if cautiously, was now a resource I guarded more fiercely than my billions. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Ava, now officially Obsidian Secure's Director of Personnel Security, entered with tablets for both of us. "The new biometric protocols are ready for final authorization," she said, handing me one of the devices. "Dr. Reeves confirmed they're completely resistant to extraction attempts, even with the technology they tried to use on you." After the hospital crisis, I had offered Ava a position within my reorganized company. Her integrity and courage had proven more valuable than decades of traditional experience. Similarly, Dr. Reeves now headed Obsidian's medical research division, developing countermeasures against technologies designed to extract biometric data without consent. "The board meeting starts in 10 minutes, Ava reminded me. "Clara has the quarterly reports ready." I nodded, taking a final moment at the window before turning toward the conference room where my executive team waited. Clara, Bill, and Martin had all transitioned to key positions in the new organization, their loyalty rewarded with equity stakes and expanded authority. What Jonas and his backers had failed to understand was that my true fortune had never been financial. It was the network of relationships I'd built, the people who had stood by me when everything else was stripped away. The $300 million hidden fortune had helped, certainly, providing resources when they were most needed. But it was human capital that had ultimately saved both me and my company. As I took my seat at the head of the conference table, I reflected on the legacy this experience would leave. Beyond the corporate restructuring and enhanced security protocols, beyond even the landmark legal precedents established by our case, was a personal philosophy crystallized through fire. Prepare for betrayal, plan for survival, but value the genuine loyalty that reveals itself in crisis. Let's begin, I said to my assembled team, each one proven through the ultimate test. We have a company to rebuild and an industry to transform. The Blackwood fortune, no longer hidden but now strategically deployed, would create a lasting legacy far beyond wealth itself. A legacy of security, resilience, and the power of preparing for the worst while building something truly worthwhile. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.